Which way do you want to go?
Up.
Yeah? Do you have a normal sort of dog walking route?
I mean, it's sort of changed because a few times I went up to the fields recently and it was so busy. And our kind of route, you're going to have to excuse the dog walking across you. Everywhere you go, he will be in your way. Yeah, it was so busy and people running. So I got a little bit stressed by that. So I literally started going up the hill and back down again. But I go out to Clissold Park in the mornings.
Okay.
But again, dodging round. It's like playing a video game. You know, you're coming to the entrance to the park and you're seeing, okay, there's someone coming from the left.
Yeah.
Got to dodge round this tree.
Totally.
Hold it for a beat. How about you? Are you a runner or a...
I bought a road bike, which I've been enjoying. My brother-in-law is a very sort of mad cyclist. So I go with him. We got lost in Hertfordshire a couple of days ago, which was quite fun.
How brilliant.
We managed to find our way home eventually, but
oh my God.
yeah, I've really been enjoying that.
At least
actually.
it's quite flat, I suppose.
Yeah, it's pretty flat. Yeah, bit
But
of running.
It's nice out there, isn't it?
It surprised me. And once you get sort of beyond Barnet
Yeah.
and Potter's Bar and all that, and I was like, oh wow, this is the countryside
And it's
as
weird.
I remember it.
I have a friend who keeps a horse up in Barnet.
Right.
And I went up there one time to ride from the stable and she was like, yeah, you go up the A1, da-da-da-da, turn off. And you just can't believe how quickly you get into total countryside. From 1 minute you're in London, in the city, and then...
Are you a Londoner?
It's lovely.
Were you born here?
I wasn't. I was born in Hampshire.
Okay.
So I had a very country upbringing. Boarding school in the country. And then I went to school in London. My parents took pity on me, being so bored in the
So sort of sixth
countryside.
form.
Yeah, and never looked back really.
So they moved to London, or you,
No,
or
no.
just you?
I went to school in Harley Street.
Oh yeah.
Odd, though that is. Same school as Amber Rudd, in fact.
There you go.
Yeah, no, my parents very much country people by that stage. But you said you moved to the area 20 years ago.
Yeah, I suppose I grew up in the countryside as well, and then and also went to a boarding school. And sort of always had this feeling from around about 13 that I really just wanted to move to London. I just had this feeling that London would have what I needed in terms of sort of freedom.
There's just that awful thing in the country, isn't there? You begin to panic.
Yeah.
Sort of just one more day looking out on those fields and you're just going to...
I was reflecting on that the other day. I don't know if you had a similar experience, but I went to boarding school and then just didn't really... When I'd go home to North Yorkshire, I just didn't really know anyone. So my sort of best friend really was the fields and the trees.
Right.
And I loved it in a way, but it was also very lonely.
Solitary and then suddenly too solitary.
Yeah, exactly. Solitary and then too solitary.
North Yorkshire, wow. And is your family still there?
No, they moved down to London shortly after I did.
Okay.
So I came here for university, UCL, and in fact moved after being in halls of residence for a short while. Moved right into a flat, like a house share in Highbury.
All right.
On Battledean Road, and
oh wow.
And I lived on up in Archway when I first met my wife, and then on Barlbeck Road, just here, and now on the hill.
And so now you've got did you say a studio or an office?
Yeah, our office is on Corsica Street.
Nice.
Yeah, which is really lovely. We used to work in Oxford Circus, and then I just...
Oh, bloody hell.
I hated it, actually.
Oh my God, just, you can really get out of the habit of doing that, can't you?
Yeah, you can. Is your work based at home, or do you go into an office?
No, I'm at the Guardian at King's Cross.
You go in there?
And I go in there. It's like the best commute of my career.
Oh yeah, it's a
which
dream,
is like
isn't it?
10 minutes on a bike, downhill on the way. So it's really great, and it's a lovely office.
Yeah.
Because I worked in the old Guardian office in Farringdon Road, which was an absolute warren.
Yeah.
So this is very... Have you been there? It's very...
I've been there. I've been there for a couple of talks and things.
Right, yeah. It's a very nice place to work.
And the area has got so great now.
The area is so amazing. I mean, my teenage kid going to school in Marylebone used to get off at the tube at King's Cross and come up and see me. And you'd think, my God, even 5 years ago, I would never have let a 13-year-old, walk up through King's Cross. It's so different now.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it?
But it's got very fancy, and I guess it won't be long before the Guardian's priced out of the area, but we'll see.
That's an interesting thought. So tell me about your relationship to Islington then. When did that begin?
I just lived very, very cheaply wherever I could. So I've kind of lived everywhere. Peckham, Acton, Archway, and then Stoke Newington, and then somewhere just off Holloway Road
Yeah.
for a while. So I kind of circled the area. And then we were looking for a house sort of all over town when we got married. I had a place in Shepherd's Bush at that point. And my husband found this house that backed onto the old stadium. And because there was some doubt about what was going to happen to the stadium at that stage, so it's like, it's 20 years ago, we could afford it, because the prices weren't too crazy at that time.
Yeah.
And I think they were held down by that uncertainty. So, yeah, I wasn't sure what I felt about living next to a stadium, but because it was a bigger house than we could obviously afford.
Yeah.
It was great. Then we had, 2 years of construction on the flats, which was pretty hideous.
That must have been pretty painful.
I wasn't at home in the day, but the days that I was, when they were digging out the car park underneath the new flats, you really thought your house was just going to go. It was quite stressful. They had some huge machine that would just go boom. And, the old Victorian walls, plasterboard would shake.
In its finished state, it's a pretty cool development.
It is.
I like it a lot.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
A colleague of mine lives there. Kate's parents, obviously. It does look really nice. Definitely like what they did with it. And if they'd moved the football a little bit further, I'd be even happier.
Are you Arsenal fans in your house?
No.
No interest? Do you have children?
Yes, but neither of them have ever been even slightly interested in football.
What are they into?
It's just quite funny. Music, the older one, and fashion, and a bit music, the younger one. He's quite a good drummer, but that classic thing of if you kind of go, wow, you're quite good at this, they can sort of sense you getting all sort of twitchy and, whoa,
then
wow,
immediately they lose interest.
get a band, why don't you? And so they're just like, ugh, you're turning it into your project.
How old are they?
20 and 18 now.
Okay. Are they with you at the moment?
One, the younger one, is with us,
Yeah.
who was working as a model.
Okay.
So all of that work has obviously disappeared.
Kaputsky.
Yeah, so he's actually doing incredibly well. He's just chilling. Oh, it's getting awfully busy. We can stand 2 meters apart on the poster.
We could go somewhere else altogether. Do you ever walk down Gillespie Park or around that sort of way? There's never anyone there. What's your dog called?
Edward.
Edward. What's Edward into?
He quite likes Gillespie.
Is he all right doing streets?
Yeah, we could head down that way.
Will be better. Streets will be much less full, I think.
It's true. He's fine. We were out on the heath at dawn this morning. We went up to hear the dawn chorus.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. And our son came with us, we were amazed by.
Got out of bed.
In fact, he slept on the sofa because he thought, if I don't go to bed, then it won't be so hard to get, what they're like, the rationale.
Totally.
But yeah, up at 4:30.
That's incredible. My 13-year-old will definitely sleep until midday or 1 if he can.
Yeah, it is amazing. It's amazing how their timetable just becomes completely unleashed from anything.
I heard that there's been some quite good experiments about starting school later for teenagers and how it helps with their attention in class and so forth.
It makes total sense. I can't imagine why they haven't just adopted it.
It's something to do with the way that it dovetails with people's working lives, I guess, but yeah, it does seem like a bummer.
But who finishes work at 3:30 anyway? I think
true, yeah. I think in fact California as a state has said that they'll be switching to school starting an hour later in 2 years' time or something.
Wow.
And they're just giving everyone a chance to sort of figure out what that means for them and stuff.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you've got a 13-year-old who's on 13-year-old time zone.
Yeah. We got that one and we have a 9-year-old as well, 2 boys. They're doing well. The 13-year-old's very sort of contained. internal sort of person, so he's
It's really sorting the
happy.
introverts from the rest of us.
The younger
isn't
one's
it?
much more social and I think misses his friends, is delighted when he gets to talk to his friends on the computer or
Aw.
when he sees them in real life a couple of times.
Do you try and do sort of gateway
So actually
meetings?
today was the first day that a friend of his, for at least a couple of months, came round and they sort of stood 2 meters apart in the garden kind of thing.
Oh,
But it meant a lot to him, I think. He really enjoyed it.
that's so sweet. Well, they're
Yeah.
so stitched into each other at that age. I've got to say, 9 was my absolutely favourite age.
Oh, really?
I mean, they're very nice now.
Yeah.
But when they were children, I think
Oh,
there's
God,
something very particular about 9. It's just before all the...
It is.
Chaos.
Yeah, they're becoming self-aware, obviously, but like not so self-aware that they've lost that kind of lovely sheen of innocence.
Yeah, and not so self-aware that they're totally embarrassed by your every
Yeah.
breath.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been interesting having a 13-year-old. I absolutely hated being 13.
Me too.
It was terrible. First year of boarding school, I just hated it. And it's definitely set off a lot of kind of alarms for me.
Oh, really?
Having a 13-year-old boy, yeah.
But it doesn't make it any easier to manage them, does it? Having been through, I don't know, does it? I suppose the
no,
only
I
thing
mean-
is if you remember that it was a difficult time
yeah,
to be.
it's about being patient, I think.
Yeah.
And about knowing that they are different from you. That's the hardest thing of all, in a sense. But you would know that better than me. I guess you've actually been through that, all those teenage years.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, there is that kind of. Well, I was such a swotty kid, and mine really are not.
You were really focused on your schoolwork.
I mean, to this day, I'm not entirely sure whether it was because there was nothing else to do, in the middle of a field in Wiltshire, or whether I was so competitive I just had to get top marks, possibly a combination of the two. But my children just were not interested in that. And you just find
intriguing.
yourself going, but how can you not care? Edward, come on, stop eating the grass.
What's your relationship to their not caring?
I used to find it incredibly frustrating, actually.
Yeah.
But my husband is much more balanced person, and he would say no.
Was he driven academically?
No,
like-
not at all.
Right.
So yeah, you just, at a certain point, you just have to recognise that they're their own people, don't you?
Yeah, for sure. That does seem to be the trick. And the more you see them as, being you, the bigger problems you're going to have.
Yes, exactly. But especially it's quite tricky as well when they look like you, as the younger one does, or did,
Yeah.
a bit.
Confronted.
How can you be so not me?
That's so funny. Yeah, my older son doesn't look like me at all, really. He looks exactly like his mum, which is lucky for him. The little one looks a bit more like me.
So where should we go straight down?
Yeah, let's do that. We can always sort of go more Clissoldish or...
So how many of these interviews have you done so far? Your
6.
walks interviews?
6, I guess.
6.
But I want to just... my dream is that they become a chain. Like, my hope is that, you enjoy it enough that you can recommend someone else for me that lives in the neighbourhood that I can go for a walk with.
It was quite funny. I was thinking of people and I was thinking, oh no, he'll already know them all.
No, I don't mind that.
Definitely
That's
will.
okay. I sort of vaguely feel like it would be fun if it went woman, man, woman, man, woman, man. But it's just a vague thought. I'm actually feeling, I don't know what, just a little bit sort of sombre today. Probably not at my most engaging.
Is there something in the day that has made that happen, or is it just how you woke
I'm
up?
feeling-
Very weird not
I don't know
having
how I woke up a bit,
a
yeah.
work situation to jolt you out of. Or do you go down to the office every day?
No, I don't. I go to my, I've got a shed at the back of the garden that I've sort of turned into a temporary office, which I love. Yeah, works good.
But what happens? I mean, you're in music, aren't you? You're a
Yeah, I
manager.
manage bands. I've well, there's no touring to be done,
Yeah.
obviously.
Has there been a lot involved in sort of stopping the touring? I mean, do you have to
There was
sort of-
to sort of steal the term. It was a whole triage phase where we had to, reschedule tours, cancel dates, figure out insurance issues, communicate with fans. That
Yeah.
was painful. We're sort of pretty much through that now.
Right.
But I think like a lot of industries, we're in this place now of not really having any idea when things might return to anything like normal. So it is a bit of a fantasy to sort of be planning at the moment, especially with kind of a global tour. I mean, what does that mean? Who knows? But I'm sort of guessing that the live music business is going to be very, very small fry next year, and then we'll maybe start to bounce back again in 2022 properly. And then
Do you think? God, that's so hard to even get your head around, the idea that this time next year it wouldn't all be back to
I don't
normal.
think so, because there's just there are a lot of problems logistically. There's problems with insurance, and I think there's also just consumer confidence. You know, do people really want to do that?
Do you know what? I honestly think if people were told that all the restrictions were off, they would go back to normal in a heartbeat. I honestly do.
Yeah.
I mean, people say that they wouldn't, but I really think everyone just will go back to normal if you just look around today.
Have you guys been able to find time in your work for more kind of philosophical conversations in this time? I imagine you've got a pretty brilliant collection of minds.
I mean, yeah, we have. We've had some really good people. There's a psychologist, well, he's a psychotherapist, but called Gary Greenberg, who's based in New York, and he's a really brilliant writer. And he's written a couple of really good pieces for us about sort of the impact of all this psychologically. And there's another American, Rebecca Solnit, who she does nice sort of galvanizing pieces about why we should be hopeful,
Right.
how this is a great opportunity for change, and you know, and it's great, but one can't help think that this is the triumph of hope over my natural pessimism.
For sure.
Oh, this way to Gillespie. I don't think you can take dogs in this way,
Oh, can't you? Okay.
but you can take them in the bottom way. Yeah, because when they turned it into a fabulous eco park, they shut dogs out.
Okay. I think, you know, it depends on how long a view you have, maybe.
It's true. We've also got a piece I'm really excited about, which is about the future of tourism
Right.
and looking at whether this break will give us the opportunity to rethink the way we do it, and there's so many places that are completely, really wrecked by over-tourism.
I mean, people's ability to afford it and their willingness to do it, I guess all of that impacts the cost of tourism as well, won't it? When it becomes very expensive to get a plane flight somewhere.
Well, people have had quite good ideas about saying, this is what they cost, and you're only allowed 3 a year.
Right.
And so even if you've got a gazillion pounds, you're only flying 3 times a year. And that makes you think, oh, actually, that could work. You know, so you can get your £30 flight to, you know, Marbella or whatever, or you can get your £2,000 flight to Sydney. But you can only do it 3 times. And that sort of thing, just bringing it down.
That kind of thinking, and whether, you know, that sort of think tank thinking actually being applied to real kind of business practices or government policy would be really cool. One of the things that I've felt like keep hearing people saying, you know, oh, I wonder if anything will really change. And I keep thinking, well, what do you think? Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
what's your answer to that question? How are you going to change?
It's true, but there are just horrible realities that you run into, such as you're thinking about, you know, okay, great, the whole cruise industry will just finish. It'll just end. You know, nobody's going to want to go back on a cruise ship. But they're already offering people incredibly cheap tickets to the next,
Yeah.
you know, multi-thousand room cruise. Plus, the owner of Carnival, which is the biggest cruise company, is one of Trump's backers. So there's that sort of thing. You think, oh God, it's just too entrenched.
I mean, you've got to hope that, you know, that if we can look back on this period in sort of 30 years' time, that it will be the kind of last dying cough of that generation's unfettered capitalism.
Yeah, and a sense of, yeah, there was some old Tory on the radio this morning saying, well, you've just sort of simply got to encourage people to consume more, and you've just got to get people buying more stuff. You're like, really? You're still coming, you know, harping on with this story? Thank you.
Still on that tip.
Still on that. You know, surely the record's changed. So that's quite shocking. You know, I mean, I guess it's the old dinosaur, and maybe people listening to him were thinking, you old dinosaur.
Well, there is something about the sort of movement of the generations that has an impact, whether you like it or not, you know, and that the baby boomer generation is just not really going to be around much longer.
It's true.
I sort of think of them, much as I love my mum and dad, but I think of them as being the kind of the most selfish generation there's ever been.
Yeah, it's true. But also when you look at, we ran a piece about air conditioning, the story of air conditioning.
Yeah.
And in the, I'm going to get this wrong, but let's say 50s and 60s, in America, builders were very much encouraged to create buildings that used as much energy as possible. You know, so that was the generation that grew up. You know, it was, I mean, obviously it's still going on in Saudi, and you know, the conspicuous consumption, but the ravenous consumption of energy, even if it wasn't greed, it was sort of motif of those times.
I guess the 50s kind of started that off, didn't it? That feeling that everything was limitless.
But also the sense that you've got to, you know, everybody's going to be spending and consuming to get the economy going, to get us all back on our feet.
Yeah.
So
I was reading a book, just a sort of fun novel that my cousin recommended to me, something that would, you know, just be a bit escapist and silly.
That's Our House with the messy,
which one are you?
Messy head.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah.
That's set in the 80s and was written in the 80s. And I'm like, oh my God, it's just unbelievable to see how the world was viewed through, you know, before political correctness, before, you know, when sort of greed was so celebrated.
Yeah.
But like with no irony. It's like, yeah, of course. And it really like really struck a chord for me, because that's, you know, that was my childhood, was in the 80s, especially going to America, and all that kind of flashy, Trumpish stuff is very familiar to me. It reminds me of my childhood, kind of golden hotels.
Yeah.
You know, all that sort of stuff.
It's quite interesting because the fashion sort of cycle in a madly speeded up way through the generations. But last year or the year before was back to the 80s, and the 80s is back. But it's not a coincidence, that, is it? It's the mindset as well.
Well, I think, yeah, isn't it? It's sort of a 20 or 25 year cycle or something. People sort of, young teenagers delve into their parents' record collections and find some of the bits that they think are cool and then recycle them.
Do your kids like the same records you do? On a lighter note.
Not really.
No,
maybe
here's someone you
a
could
bit.
interview.
Okay, great.
Walk with. Shall I introduce you?
Yeah, do.
Tom. This is Adam, who lives higher up the street. This is Tom. This is Oliver.
Hi, Tom. How you doing? Hi, Oliver.
Adam's doing what do you call it? Project? Walking around the neighbourhood with neighbours during lockdown.
I'm meeting neighbours for the first time. I live at 32.
Just to be sociable?
Yeah, but I'm recording the conversations because I thought it might be interesting as a little personal project. I started with my next door neighbour, George, and he introduced me to Kate, who introduced me to Charlie, who introduced me to you.
And now I'm introducing you. So we...
Good idea.
It's fun, it's nice. I've felt for ages, it's quite a strange... Like the road itself, like the actual kind of geography of the road makes it hard for it to feel like a neighbourhood because it's so long and it's...
Well, once you're across Albert Park...
Oh, it gets more neighbourly down here. It's not very...
It's sort of got a segment.
Yeah, it's a bit segmented maybe, yeah. We used to live on Baalbek Road, and that whole sort of area there around Corsica Street and Gallia Road and Calabria is like very much a neighbourhood.
Right.
Everybody knows each other, and we felt like, you know, people would constantly be kind of knocking on our door and saying hi and stuff.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's really nice. This doesn't, where we are now, up Highbury Hill a bit, it's felt a bit harder to get to know the neighbours. So I thought I'd be proactive about it.
Very good. So anyhow, we're going to keep...
Where do you live, Tom?
115.
115.
115.
115, just a little bit further up, past Clare and Adrian's.
They've been putting us all to shame. They've made a beautiful little film starring the entire family.
Lovely.
It's very
Lovely.
good. Very good.
It was during lockdown, they ended up taking
All of
Oh, that's
all of
good.
lockdown. Anyway,
Very
I'll
nice. Well, nice to meet you. If you fancy a walk and talk sometime, no pressure at all. Let me know. Be nice. All right.
It's very cute, the film. So this is the little entrance to...
Okay. I don't think I know about this entrance. I guess the thing I'm feeling somber about is a sort of tragic thing that's happened in the last couple of days. Maybe it's easiest if I just tell you so that it's not like this weird thing. But friends of mine in Nashville were out walking in a storm and a tree fell on them. And the guy, Jeff, and his son were both really badly injured, and the son still, is in an induced coma and still hasn't woken up.
Oh, Jesus.
The dad's had to have his spine reassembled. I don't know what's going on.
They were walking?
Yes, out for a walk in the woods. They were sheltering under a tree in the storm.
Oh my God,
it's kind of horrendous.
Awful. So the son, you just don't know whether he's...
The son's little, he's only like 2.
Oh God, unbearable.
So, yeah. Wow, this is cool.
God, poor you. When did you hear about it?
I heard about it a couple of days ago, but it's been, it's just been in my mind.
Well, it's just one of those things you think, why am I feeling so weird? And then you think, oh yeah, I remember now.
Exactly. I'm waiting to hear some good news about the kid, and then I'll feel better about it.
Right, yeah. But also, when stuff is happening, like I've got 2 or 3 friends I heard about today whose parents have been either taken desperately ill, not with COVID, but or died, and you just think, God, it's just sort of, I guess with the oldies.
Well, I think
it's going to happen.
There's a sort of baseline of anxiety relating to the crisis that we're in.
Yeah,
and so anything that gets put on top of that seems maybe even more amplified than normal.
It's true, and I think it takes you right off kilter. And that's probably why the writers that we work with, they seem to have closed it. The writers that we work with that can somehow drag some optimistic kind of moment for change kind of theme are really appreciated.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I personally enjoy those optimistic conversations as well. I mean, I don't see,
These dogs look like they mean business. We might beat a hasty retreat.
Okay. Yeah, that's been a sort of weird feeling that you're sort of not allowed to enjoy yourself, or you're not allowed to have a positive conversation or something. That we should all be sort of, come on, that there has to be a kind of solidarity with people who are in a worse position.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the reality is that if you took a snapshot of any day you've been alive, billions of people are in a worse position than you.
True.
So.
And there was that awful moment, I fell prey to this a bit early on, of kind of, but what's going to happen in refugee camps?
Yeah.
People going, what? It's happening down the road,
Yeah.
It's just very hard to get a grip, Lovely day, we're on the heath, the dawn chorus and the sunrise, and you have to remember, I suppose I have had a guilty feeling about it. You remember that the only reason you're having this lovely walk in the early morning is because you don't have to go to work.
Well, that's something to hold on to.
I know.
What are your normal sort of hours then with your work?
Sort of 10 till 7.
Right. And what are you doing in your day?
Now or in a normal day?
Well, I was thinking in a normal day.
Mainly grappling with big 5,000 word pieces of long form journalism that are very intensively edited.
Are you sort of, as it were, commissioning people to write on a particular subject?
Yeah.
Right. And then you're seeing what they come up with and...
well, because the pieces are quite sort of substantial.
Yeah, the long reads.
Yeah. Exactly. We kind of go through as much as possible in advance. So you have the conversation, you have 2 or 3 conversations, then you get them to do a really detailed outline. And then maybe go back and forth a couple of times over the outline. So by the time the draft comes in, hopefully you know the shape of it.
What do you think about this sort of disinterest in more long-form journalism?
Well, I love it. Absolutely love it. It's my absolutely favourite job. I've been working in journalism for 30 years, I guess. And it's just great.
You must have a great sort of capacity to be able to really concentrate yourself. Because as a reader, I love a long-form thing too. But as a reader, it's probably that much less demanding than it would be for you as a commissioner or an editor.
Yeah, I mean, I was working with somebody who is incredibly clever, and he really has a brilliant sense of how a piece should be and how it should shape up and what it needs. But it could take him kind of 3 weeks to get the momentum going, to read it. And when he read it, it's like 20 minutes, bish bash bosh, he's totally figured it out, thing that you've been trying to work out for 3 days. But it was like he had to take this huge psychological run-up. It was just amazing.
That's interesting.
And I think it's the same. You can sort of fiddle away and not be able to get your mind around something, and then maybe even sitting at the kitchen table late at night, you can finally
It clicks in.
get it. But it is hard. I find it very hard, and particularly now. Yeah, concentration is difficult. And they are very labour-intensive things.
Yeah, I bet.
So actually our sort of day-to-day rhythm hasn't really changed. You know, you're still there wherever you are. You're just there kind of grappling.
So I guess what's the benefit of being in an office for you, do you think?
It's very important to be considered part of the whole production. You can get any bit of the paper can feel very sidelined.
Right.
So you really need to, I mean, you've got, with the website, you know, you've got people who are choosing what's being promoted at the top, you know, and they've got a million pieces coming through their hands. So you sort of need to go up, make sure that they've seen your piece and know how great it is and how important. So there's a certain amount of doing.
And that needs to be done in person.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And you know, we do audio long reads, there's a podcast. So there are various things that you just need to be present. But hopefully maybe we don't need to be there so much. Maybe we just don't. You can get very tied to a desk for no reason. What about you? You're travelling a lot, so you probably don't get.
I've got to assume that the sort of whatever version that we used to have of the kind of 2-hour meeting in Milan is like, why would anyone do that anymore?
That's what I meant. That's one thing that might change, mightn't it, in terms of the flying and the business travel?
Well, no, I think it's going to change a ton, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I think a bunch of that business travel will drop off.
Yeah.
Because it's been proven to not be needed.
Yeah.
And then you can also pat yourself on the back that you've saved some money and that you've helped the environment.
Yeah.
So I feel like that would have to change. You know, one thing that I've really noticed being in the music business is that as kind of useful as the technology is, it's still pretty crap. It's just not that good. You know, it's constantly like people dropping out, freezing, the audio quality is rubbish.
Yeah.
Like if you want to try and play music over stuff.
Oh my God, right.
It's terrible.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's adequate, but it's not good. So I think there's going to be a technological revolution in all of this stuff.
Huh, that's interesting.
I think people will see this and they'll be like, oh no, we should be able, you know, this whole 5G conspiracy nonsense will quickly disappear when people realise that they can kind of stream cinema quality stuff at home.
Yeah.
You know, from someone else's. I think that's going to be a real
that's
game
a
changer.
really good. Oh, that's really interesting though. So you could be listening to better quality stuff, having conversations that weren't freezing.
The quality of home broadcasts is so bad.
Yeah.
And I think we sort of forgive it if it's just a Zoom meeting. But to me, even the Zoom meetings are pretty rubbish. You know, another thing that's a real issue is that you're never actually looking anyone in the eye on those screens.
You're looking at,
Yeah, you're looking at this weird, it's a very weird experience.
It's true. But also there's a terrible thing that lots of people have mentioned, so I don't feel totally vain mentioning it, is that it's very hard not to look at yourself and be worrying about, you know,
of course,
how grim and frowny you look.
Well, there's now developing a whole kind of set of protocols around it. Like my kids, they just switch their cameras on and off the whole time. There's no sense of like it's impolite to turn my camera off. No, it's just like I'm going to go and do something now. I don't particularly want to have the camera on. They just switch it off.
Okay.
Mid conversation, and then they switch it back on.
I had heard a very funny thing, which is that kids doing schoolwork or a Zoom class,
are like
pretending that it's
Pretending it's frozen.
and then somebody walks past.
That's good. They were given instructions that they weren't supposed to sort of reveal any personal details in the background, kind of thing.
Right.
Which is a bit weird. I don't know.
Quite difficult to do.
Yeah, I don't know what that means
I've, of course,
exactly.
self-consciously moved my pictures around.
You have? That's nice.
So that, you know.
To create the ideal backdrop. I've got this thing that I'm doing. You know, I assume you've tried virtual backgrounds on Zoom.
I haven't actually got around to that. I haven't really been doing that many meetings.
I got this thing that if you're on a big Zoom and you want to leave, but you don't want to have to interrupt the conversation, so you know, it's like 10 or more people, I've created a virtual background that just says, gotta go. And I just stick that on.
Oh, brilliant.
and then just leave.
Oh, that's great. Yes, because otherwise it gets really awkward. It's like, okay, I've got to go now. All right, okay.
I know. But you know, all of this stuff will change, won't it? It's so interesting. Applying the kind of 20th century protocols to 21st century communication is going to seem more and more ridiculous, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's amazing how crap it is, actually, you're right. But also, people just get on with it and get used to it.
Yeah, exactly. They do.
So that's another mad thing.
Yeah, we are very adaptable, aren't we?
No, sorry.
Don't worry.
So I don't have a dog, so
Dog world is so mad, it's so
to
different.
me it's like, why is she apologising?
Yeah,
What am I missing there?
bad-mannered dog baring its teeth.
But that's her dog, it's not her. Does the dog reflect on her? Is that
Of course, like your kids.
so? She's thinking to herself, like somewhere in her mind, she's like, "Oh God, they're going to think I haven't trained my dog well enough," you know, or that sort of thing.
I mean, at some level, yeah. Yeah. I mean, if my dog growls or is hostile to another dog, I am quite mortified.
Are you?
If their dog is just like,
Aren't they supposed to be sort of aggressive with each other, though?
I mean, probably, but we've over anthropomorphized or whatever the word
Yeah.
is. Anthropomorphized.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not. If you've trained your dog, it shouldn't be aggressive to another dog.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
It has been very interesting, the whole street language, hasn't it? I found myself, there's a little pinch point before you get to Clissold Park where runners come through, and I found myself doing this. Did I really do that?
But I mean, that's, you know, I think understanding sort of social mores in different countries and seeing how that has impacted people's, you know, practices when it comes. I mean, I know this is incredibly obvious, but like British, we're so afraid of sort of stepping out from, you know, the most polite and kind of forgiving form of behaviour, of social interaction, that, you know, to say to someone who's like running towards you, sweating and coughing, please could you stop, feels like, oh, I shouldn't do that, you know. And yet, of course you should. Like, there's no.
Well, I was sort of shocked at myself the first time I did it, but then you think, well, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
It's fair enough.
We do find it hard to, in a weird way, to stick up for ourselves, I think, sometimes,
Yeah.
British people.
Yeah, but also it's quite interesting. Do you remember when the whole thing broke out in Italy and there were so many people getting ill? And everyone was like, oh, those Italians just kiss each other all the time.
Yeah.
All kind of really over larding on the sort
Yeah.
of patronising
Yeah.
stereotype.
I'm interested in that. I'm really fascinated in, you know, as we're trying to figure out what Britain's to be, because I don't think it really knows what it is at the moment.
Yeah.
I think part of that is understanding what other people think we are. It's quite intriguing. I wonder what Italians were saying about us while we were accusing them of being too physically friendly with each other.
Well, it's quite... Yes. I guess my friend, who's one of our writers, was very defensive about it and saying, you know, you're all being so patronising about the eye ties. But the fact is that probably the older generation in Italy were simply not interested in lockdown as a concept.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
like a lot of Americans.
Yeah.
The ones who are taking their guns to the state capital of, where is it, Minnesota or somewhere.
Yeah.
And you just cannot
Michigan.
believe what you're seeing. But it's a very deep part of who they are. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is all very interesting for Britain. I think you're right. It's a real shift.
Yeah.
Just having a sense of who's doing what jobs,
Yeah.
who they are and what their living conditions are.
Yeah. Taking a sort of dispassionate, like philosophical view of the whole thing and being intrigued by it feels sort of quite callous in one way, but it is interesting.
It is. And also, you know, I mean, we're going to be poring over the data for years.
Yeah.
You know, why so many more black people? Why so many more black doctors? Why so many more, you know.